Welcome everyone to another episode of the Johnny and Gene Show. I'm Felix Levine, to my right, John Alite and Gene Borello. And before we get into it today, I want to please remind you to, if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the YouTube and subscribe to our Patreon channel. There you'll have all of our content. It goes up there early. There's bonus content, and you have the ability to ask John and Gene personal questions. We do Q&As that go just on the Patreon. And we also have great news. Our audio versions are back up on Spotify and Apple's podcast app. So if you're listening to this right now, please go give this a 5-star review and rate it there. And if you haven't listened to it there, now you have the option of listening to all of our episodes in their full audio versions. Today, we were talking a little bit before we came on air. I think we all either saw or heard of Sammy Gravano. He talked about Willie Boy Johnson. I know that you had a lot to add on and different stories and in your experience, so I'll let you take it away a little bit.
Well, if people don't know who Sammy Gravano is, and I think most of you guys that follow our show know he was the underboss of the Gambino family at one time. He's also a friend of mine, and he was speaking about Willie Boy Johnson. So I'm going to add a little bit to what he talked about Willie Boy. Willie Boy was a very tough guy. He was an Indian from a native Indian. He had his social club on Avenue U in Brooklyn, right by Kings Plaza. And he was the partner of John Gotti, the father senior, in the sports business. So I started developing a pretty big sports business. I had the New York Mets gambling with me. And I had a guy that I met the New York Mets through, Joe DeLuca, who was the equipment manager. He brought me a lot of these guys. And at the time, I didn't have the money or the office wasn't equipped at that time to handle that kind of action and make sure that it had real lines. Meaning, when you have weak lines, you can get hurt bad. And I had a guy, Mark Caputo, that used to run the office for me, one of the guys, who was also very good friends with Willie Boy Johnson. So he lived with Willie Boy for a while when he was accused of a murder at Silver Fox that we addressed before. So John Gotti told me, he called me into his office, told me to take a walk with him. I took a walk with him, and he said, listen, I'm going to bring you over, go see my partner, Willie Boy Johnson. And at that time, I didn't know Willie Boy. He says, he's expecting you. I told him you're going to come over, and you're going to be on a half sheet with us. You're going to be partners with me. And Willie Boy runs that office. So, naturally, I was happy about that, right? It's an opportunity. And when John, at that time, as a kid, I was a kid, he's noticing me. So that also makes you, as a kid, you're saying to yourself, okay, I'm getting right where I want to get. And that's with John himself. Ended up being in the drug business a little bit with him and Angelo Ruggiero and a couple of guys that I think I spoke about with Sonny DiGiorgio, and the heroin trade at the same time. When I go see Willie Boy, I go up, it's on the second floor of the office, and we start talking. And anybody that knows Willie Boy is an intimidating guy. Nice guy, intimidating guy. And I start getting friendly with him. And we're doing business, and the numbers, I'm bringing in big money. And at the same time, I'm getting some of John start sending me some of his personal friends that are big-time guys, too, that gamble. So my office is growing. I got 100 and something guys. I'm on a half sheet. I'm bringing in a couple $100,000. In those days, that's in the mid-'80s into the office. So it's big money.
That's big money for that time.
Yeah, it's very, very big money. And I get friendly with Willie Boy. As I get friendly with Willie Boy, I get friendly with his son and his nephew, Mickey Boy and Johnny. Good guys. We used to laugh, had a good time, got friendly with them. Mark Caputo was always there. I grew up with Mark since we're little kids, 10 years old. So we had a good camaraderie of guys. And Willie Boy starts teaching me the ropes. A little more about the sports business than I knew. I grew up in the sports business around my father and my uncle and different guys. So, I knew the sports business, and Willie Boy starts talking to me. And at the same time, he's talking to me about personal things. And he starts talking to me about things that people don't know about and the public don't know about. And one of those things was...
Well, my Uncle Andy. A lot of people don't know that story. I'm a younger guy, but, my cousin was around, for a long time. His father obviously was Fat Andy Ruggiero. A lot of people didn't know that Willie Boy had a bullet lodged in his head, that my Uncle Andy shot him in the head. And a lot of people don't know that story. They don't talk about my uncle's stories a lot. But he was a legendary mobster, and he has a lot of murders and shootings and stuff like that. And Willie Boy, he actually shot in the head. And I'm sure you could tell him more about it.
So when I was sitting there with Willie Boy, your cousin Anthony and me discussed this, Fat Andy's son, Anthony Ruggiano, who's on the show with us and became a member of the Gambino family. So we had this discussion, and Willie Boy's getting friendly with me, and he says to me one day, he goes, hey, they all call me kid. Obviously, back then I was a kid. And he says, feel this.
How old were you at the time?
Probably 22, 23 years old.
That's young, yeah.
Yeah. And I got close with him, and, because his kids are his nephew my age, and, we really got close. You're working with him every day, and I really liked the guy, and he had some reputation of being a tough guy. And he says, hey, we're joking around one day, and he says, feel this. So he puts my fingers on the back of his head and between his neck and his head, and he was a big guy, big neck. And he says, you feel that? And I start laughing. So that's when he went into the story. He goes, one of the toughest bastards around, he says, is Fat Andy Ruggiano. He says, I don't know if you know that, but he's a tough motherfucker. And I says, yeah, I heard. And he goes, well, I know you grew up around them and the kids and everything as a kid. I says, yeah. He says, but listen to me. And now this is talking from a guy who was a hitter. And Sammy, knows that and said that a little bit in his story about Willie Boy being a hitter and a tough guy. But after that story, I'm in court. And around the same time, he gets locked up, and Sammy talked about a prosecutor he didn't mention, was Diane Giacalone, that ends up giving up Willie, that he was either a cooperator against Gotti and other guys, or just Gotti.
How was she allowed to do that?
She wasn't allowed
Open
to
court.
do that.
Did she lose her job?
No,
She got him killed.
Yeah, she did get him killed.
She got him killed.
And so when people hear these stories, and and Sammy went on in the story talking about, now he's talking about a guy I'm very friendly with, so I know a lot more inside information. That at that time, he knows him as a guy that's involved. He's not an official member of our family because he's an Indian. He's in the kind of same situation as me or Joe Watts or the rest of us that are in high levels, partners with Gotti, but not able to be officially made or recognized. Right. But basically, he's recognized as a made guy in the family. People respect him, obviously. Is the same position as a lot of these guys that were straightened out. And Sammy talked about when they're going to hit Willie. So I'm in the court. I got a court case. Richie Raybach is John's lawyer at the time, and he's also my attorney. And I got a case of assault. I believe it was against a cop at that time on 106th Precinct. And Willie comes back into the courtroom, and he's sitting there. And I'm just like, wow, I'm on a bad spot here. The guy who's already been called an informant. They just beat the case. He's sitting in the courtroom. I look at Richie. Richie shrugs his shoulders, and I thought maybe he had some business with Richie because he was also Richie was also Willie's lawyer. And, on the way out, I say hello to him. He says, how you doing, kid? He starts talking, and you can see he's a different guy. He's just, for whatever, what happened to him, he's a different guy. And, he kisses me, and he says, I'm glad, I beat the case. I walk out with Richie, and I have to go see John. I tell Richie, you got to, make sure you see John and let him know that he was here. So I see John, and John says to me, just shakes his head. He says, okay. Because what Sammy said, this is going to happen. And I don't know how a guy that's in this life could believe he was going to get a pass and he wasn't going to get killed. Once you sit with the government like that, it's a death sentence.
In that era?
So now Sammy gets into Tommy and how vicious he is, and he brings up the book, The Butcher, which I think we brought this up on one of the shows. John, the son, had a meeting with him, and at that time, John, the son, says, well, it's written in the book that Johnny Alite's got 6 bodies at that time, and, he wanted me to meet with him. But that's not accurate. I don't know anything about that meeting. I wasn't there. I don't know where they got the information, if John actually talked to the author or Tommy talked to the author or where they got the information about me. But I was never going to any sit down with Tommy. So we're going to straighten that part of the story out. But I am in the book, and I am in the part where Gotti tells him that I got 6 bodies at that time, and I'm feared on the street and whatever. Now, when Sammy starts talking about Tommy, I don't have the same respect for Tommy. I think everybody knows that. When you're in this life and you're a wise guy, or you're a made guy, or you're a gangster, you're supposed to carry yourself like that. But when you carry yourself like
Serial killer, basically.
Drug
Killing
addicts,
innocent people.
killing girls, killing kids,
Come on,
killing
man.
old men. I don't give anybody props for killing Willie Boy Johnson, sitting on the corner, waiting to go to a construction job by himself in his 60s, heavy, can't move, can't walk. There's nothing to say. It's like killing a lamb. It's like asking somebody, oh, shoot that dog on the street right there that's got 3 legs. He can't run away. So what's the thing if you go see somebody and you shoot him 10 times or 12 times or 15 or 20 times? I know tough guys that got killed, like Scott Schumann, who was a tough kid, and they set him up and he got shot 35 times in front of his house off Queens Boulevard. But that's a young guy who's always carrying. It's a different thing.
That's right.
And if you don't catch him right, he's going to shoot back and, he'll possibly kill a couple of you. Willie wasn't in that situation. He's an old man. He's not carrying a gun. Everybody knows that. He's a lone sheep now by himself, nowhere to run. It's an easy setup kill. So I'm not impressed by the guy, and then people are constantly writing me about Tommy, and I don't like him for a lot of reasons. I believe he was behind the murder of Greg Ryder, and everybody knows that. And I went after him. I also robbed his drug house. So again, when people ask me, well, it's not true. Phil Baroni, the cop, was there. Keith Pellegrino was there. He waited down the block while I did that robbery. The girl Claudine was in the house, who owns Claudine's Haircutting Salon in Howard Beach, was also at the time dating one of, and I won't mention who, but she was dating an acting boss who's still alive also. So when people say, did I rob that house? Dennis Harrigan, yeah. Did I get about 100 to 150,000 back in those days? Yes. And after the robbery, did I leave town? Did I wear a mask? No. And people think I killed Dennis Harrigan. Now, to finish this story off, I didn't kill Dennis Harrigan. The brother-in-law knows that. Hootie knows that, because Hootie was in Atlantic City when we had the meeting. Everybody thought I still killed the guy. Never killed him. He had problems. They called him an informant also, that he was ratting on Tommy Karate on his murder case. When Sammy goes bad in 1991, Tommy's with John in MCC. John sends a message home to me through his brother Pete Gotti, who's also still alive. He's in MCC at the time. John was in MCC. He sends the message to Pete, and he asks me to kill, as a favor for Tommy Karate, to kill Dennis Harrigan. And that, to me, had to be the funniest request of me killing anybody in my life, because there was no way I wanted it. The only person I wanted to kill was Tommy Karate for killing Greg Ryder or being behind that murder. And when people say, it's not true, I just named everybody that's involved, and it doesn't take a lot for anybody to get a lawyer and or anybody in any family that's close to see Pete Gotti and find out if that's true, right? So when you're telling a story and somebody isn't alive, but this guy's alive, Pete. And I guess anybody can get confirmation from him, confirmation from Claudine. If I robbed that house, confirmation from Dennis Harrigan's brother-in-law is still around, Hootie, and Phil Barone, Keith Pellegrino. I could go on with that list.
Wait, they have him as the most prolific hitman of all time. Now, I'm not around for these times. I'm just saying, like, all the guys I know, I don't understand. They say the guy's responsible for like 200 murders, whatever. They exaggerate these numbers. I've never heard of anyone killing that many people in any organization. But I mean,
well, because you're getting information. You're getting information for. He had a guy they stayed with, Kojak,
right?
Who's a serious guy, and then you have guys like Ganji, who's a complete junkie,
right?
Who's a soft, low life,
right.
Who ends up getting pulled over for a DUI and starts ratting,
right.
and then he goes hides underground somewhere in some city or country or whatever he's doing. So, you're getting that information from the people you're getting it from. So you're hearing now, did he kill a girl? Yes, he did.
Yeah, chopped the head off, right?
Did he? So you killed a girl.
Why would he
so
do that?
Why would you get respect as a gangster for doing that? This is the part I don't understand with a lot of this stuff.
Right.
Why would you get respect for killing old man Willie? All right, he had to go, but it's no big accomplishment killing this guy. And if you killed my friend, Greg Ryder, whose father was a serious guy, a good guy, and you're disrespecting his family, him, the institute that we all live by, our loyalty to our families, meaning the Gambino family and Tommy, the Bonanno family.
Right.
So who gave permission for him to hit a young kid? Because Greg at the time was a kid, 21 years old, 22 years old. And again, not too difficult to kill him because he's still a naive kid, easy to kill him. So now he's got a couple other murders in there, but nothing was, you're telling everybody, I think he's got about 7 murders on his case.
Right.
The rest of these numbers are exaggerated. And for the people that don't know, I know very well who Tommy is, not only as my dealings with him, But prior, he grew up with a guy named Franco, his next door neighbor, who was also into jiu-jitsu and karate, would go to Japan with Tommy, very good friends with the family. And Franco, his brother-in-law, so guys that don't know, was a skipper with the Bonanno family. Charlie was a skipper also. And these were Tommy's guys that from Fort Lauderdale and Boca Raton, Florida, were good friends of mine.
And
used
and
to
he was
hang out with
originally-
me.
He was originally with Colombo guys, wasn't he?
Originally,
Yeah.
Tommy switched off.
Right.
So, you know, when guys know these stories, they don't have all the details that I have. And the guys that he was around. And, you know, guys exaggerate stories as it goes on.
Right.
Was a guy a killer? Of course he was a killer. Was a guy great with his hands and all that? Absolutely not. Did he fight a little bit? Yeah, so what? I could take you to a gym with a lot of guys that fight boxing, karate, MMA, and guys that are in the business that understand. Some guys suck. So what? They say they fight, they try to fight, and whatever nonsense everybody says about this guy is not true. I mean, did he fight a little? Yeah, he fought a little. He ain't no great expert with his hands and all that nonsense. Matter of fact, from what Franco said, he sucked. He never won a fight. Now, I wasn't there, so I'll just say, all right, the guy fought. You know, I'm not going to say he was bad or good. To be honest with you, I really don't know. I'm just repeating what another guy said who's around this life also. So when guys are talking about stories, you know, I can give them a more detailed analysis of it because I was involved with these guys intimately in different ways. And, you know, I you know, and go off that show. And there's not too many guys that, and I'm going to bring up a guy that was very friendly with to a kid, and I'll give you an example. Benny Gerentano, he was Shorty's stepson. Benny's in jail. He's in a max now. And you got these punk half-ass gangsters that talk shit about Benny now because he's locked up and he's in a max joint, solitary confinement. He's constantly in the hole. But he grew up since a kid. Now, there's a tough guy. He was a gangster. They could say what he was. He was loose cannon. They could say this and that. But these same piece of shits that talk about a guy because his hands are tied up and his life is stuck in a max somewhere. And when you talk and you call this guy or whatever, you've got a lot of names everybody's calling the guy now. First off, he ain't an informant for the people who keep saying that. He ain't a rat for the other people that say that. And one day, if he ever gets loose, those same people that are saying that are going to hide somewhere. But this is the new world of these young, tough gangsters that just type away and write bullshit, ain't about nothing. But the same thing with Willie. You know, Willie became whatever he became, but he was a serious guy. Ain't nobody going to step in a room with him and talk about him like that. But, you know, so there's different versions of what happened.
Was there any other favorite stories with Willie Boy Johnson other than the one where you felt the bullet on the back of his head?
Yeah, I mean, Willie, listen, when I was a kid, Willie was mad.
How much older was he than you?
Oh, he was,
A lot.
you know, they were all about 15 years older than me, 20 years older.
Okay.
So you figure, yeah, he was
22,
probably in
he's
his
not
37,
37,
all
something
his,
like that.
yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, when guys are telling stories when they don't know a guy, I knew the guy, and the guy was generous to all of us. Mark, if he was here, he would tell you. His son and his nephew would tell you, not because of his son and nephew, but just Willie was a decent human being. Forget about, I'm not talking about mob world or mob life, but he was, you know, he treated you almost, you know, and I'm a kid, treated you like an equal, treated you almost like his own kid when you're around him. And there's certain qualities and certain old-time gangsters that, you know, these guys ain't clueless about. Or guys like his Uncle Andy, you know, these guys were just complete gentlemen to you. And they taught you a different way of growing up in his life. And when people say, is there another story of Willie? Yeah, Willie used to fly off the handle because John was a crazy gambler. And, you know, I'm John's guy. I'm on record with John. So let me get something straight to him. I was with the regime, meaning I was with Gotti Sr. I don't get placed with Junior until he gets straightened out in 89, and I was with them only for 2 or 3 years. The father placed us with him to legitimize him as a gangster, me and Bobby Borriello and a couple other guys. But I'm with John. I'm not with anybody but John. So anybody understands where I came from. But Willie Boy was bad-mouthing the shit out of John. And I'm like thinking to myself, you know, I'm around gangsters my whole life since I'm born, but I'm saying there's a lot of treachery and Machiavelli, and I'm saying, does this guy want me to join in to see if I could talk bad about John? This is what I'm thinking.
Setting you up.
And I'm not, well, he's not, but you know, later on I find this out, but I'm saying, is he trying to check my loyalty with John? Why is he talking like this in front of me about John? Because John would bet a game. You know, most guys think, well, he's a big gambler, 5,000, 5 dimes, whatever they would say. John would bet 100 dimes. 100,000 a game. And I'm going back to the 80s. So he was a maniac. He wouldn't bet one game. He'd bet 6, 7. He'd bet the horses.
for
He'd bet
100,000.
everything. So Willie would have, our office would be winning. You know, I got my own office with them, and they got their own office, and they'd be up, say, 800,000.
Oh my God.
It's Friday or Saturday, and they're going into the weekend, and then they get, they're going to make big money for the weekend. And Sunday, here comes Sunday rolling around, and John throws in. So Willie's going through the sheets, and he's getting calls from John to put in more action, and he's going crazy. He says, motherfucker, he's going crazy. And I got my head down, and I'm like, I don't want to hear this shit. And he's like, he's been everything opposite what I need. So now I'm trying to escape. You know, I'm trying to say, no. And then he's trying to keep me there. Kid, stay here, stay. And we're watching games, right? We're listening to games. We're watching, because it was a different era. You didn't have 100 channels like you do now. So we're listening to games, we're calling in, and he's getting clobbered. John's getting clobbered. Willie, the sports office, the action's making all kinds of money. And
Did he pay when he lost?
no.
Right?
Half the time he told everybody to get lost.
Oh man.
So, you're getting phone calls from John because you're trying to get the late games in. In those days, they didn't have now you got the 4 and you got the 7, you got the 9, you got the 8, you got different games you can still get in and try to get it back. They didn't have it back then. So, when that 4 o'clock games come in.
So
and he's
back
losing,
then there was only what time?
yeah, the 4 o'clock was the last game. Yeah,
There was
maybe
no
here
night
and there.
games, right?
Yeah, I don't really think there was. I don't really remember that extent, but I think maybe one or something. Once in a blue moon, if anything. Now you got them day and night, all day during the week. So when you're down and you're getting hit in a 1 o'clock game, so it's around 3:30. You call in because the 10 to 4 the line's usually shut. So he starts getting the calls in, and he's putting in another like 12 games. He's putting reverses and he's putting in
reverses.
parlays.
I'm talking about them things.
He's putting in everything, and he's getting killed. So he's like, kid, go back to that fucking club. And he's talking shit too. He ain't saying that to John, but he's talking all that. And John got killed. So Willie broke everything in the office. And, he didn't have a fancy office, desk or whatever. And he would break everything in the office. And I'm sitting here like this thinking to myself, well, I don't want to go back to Ozone Park because he just lost everything. I don't want to be sitting here. And, and then you get the messages, tell this guy that. And he's giving me a message, tell that guy that. And, it's just a funny situation when you sit back and you think about it, And John never hardly won. That was, he's just a crazy gambler. But I was used to it. My uncle not my uncle, my father, my uncles gambled the same way, but not with that kind of money.
Right.
But they all bet over their head. Anybody that's a gambler knows everybody. And when you want to catch up,
That's it. That's
What was the biggest number you ever saw John bet on a single
Gotti,
game?
the fall?
Senior.
Oh, he bet crazy numbers. I mean, and listen, he would bet. If somebody said, listen, they played a game, Continental is a card game. Paul Castellano's brother, after he gets killed, comes to our club, and I'm like, look at his blowjob. He's coming to play Continental's brother just got clipped. So, this is the treachery of the mob. And Mark Caputo used to keep score. When people ask me about who knows the Gottis as well as me, I'd say Mark was probably there's nobody besides me and Mark. And later on, Mark gets away from everybody. So, I'd probably be the only guy that really knows him to that extent. But Mark knew John very well, and he was always around the family and everything. So, these stories, and Mark was very close with Willie Boy. He lived with him when he went on a run for the Silver Fox murder, and he stayed with Willie Boy. So Mark knows him pretty good. But Mark was the guy that kept the score for, the Continental game, and Mark would be at the track all the time. And, that's how Anthony Rouge and Fat Andy and everybody knew my father, because my father was a degenerate gambler. He lived in the track. And, his cousin Anthony will tell you, everybody knew my father from the track and from sports, but he didn't have the money these guys did. And, gamblers are funny. They all flock together. Everybody knows each other.
Who's giving, does John get picks from someone? Does he have sharps? Or is he making it all himself?
Listen, it's funny you said, because, sometimes, John was, people only know one side of John. Right. He would go crazy. And this idiot kid that stays with his son said something once, because his father says one time, I'll suck that horse's dick just to get one winner, when the horse was racing. Right. And the idiot repeated, doesn't know the father said it at one time. And then we used to joke about it and use it as a reference and say the same thing. You're copying the guy, what he said. And
Yeah, Vin used to say, "I'll suck 3 dicks. He isn't a rat."
Yeah,
That's just
So, it's funny, but John was a funny, everybody only knows him for the bad things. I talk about it on a couple of shows I just did that's going to be airing on, I think, Netflix and Nat Geo, I'm not sure. But I talk about the good side of him. Because even when he was gambling, he would be crazy, but he would joke a lot too. And he would say to me, he would talk, and there was a guy, Jimmy Irish, that was hanging around, would put bets in. He didn't put one of his bets in from once, and John won. He says, I ain't chopping that fucking horse's head off. I'm going to chop his off. From The Godfather, he tells some funny. But he joked about when he was losing. He goes, do me a favor. He says, take a couple bucks, go get me the horse tallies, right? He wanted the papers. And he said, if you find a fucking blind, dumb guy, bring him here because I want him to pick some games for me. He said some funny things. And it doesn't sound funny here, but, when he said it, the guy just lost $1 million, whatever he lost. And he's joking, and he still has the sense of humor. So that was a good side of John that people didn't.
How rich at his peak was Senior?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, listen.
If you had to estimate.
Again, John he wasn't one of those guys that wanted to live in a $5 million house like Paul Castellano. He lived in a bullshit average house. He didn't care about that. He would say, I'm a gangster. I live on the street. So as fast as it came in, it went out. So he wasn't one of those guys that put the money in his pocket. He really wasn't. Joe Watts would go out with him. Joe Watts would pick up a ton of, tabs. And when we went down to Lauderdale and we stayed at Joseph, John didn't care. He tipped the shit out of everybody, even though Joe was picking up things. He's a spender, gambler, crazy. So I don't know. I mean, he never really saved money. As fast as it came in, and he spent everybody still. So he wasn't just spending his. But he was generous too. If you needed money on, he lent a lot of money. A lot of guys like Jay Black.
My grandfather was in the Copacabana, and he was in there. And my grandfather's like, I'm going to pay he goes, John, I'm going to pay your bill. He goes, oh, you want these too? He had the whole place. He was paying for everybody's bill in the whole place.
Like his uncle knew, like Jay Black and them all with Andy's guys. And then later on, when Andy goes to prison and everything, they go around John. But John lent all of the money. He did lend a lot of money out. So there's a lot of good qualities about the guy. And gamblers are gamblers. They all have that same crazy sense of humor. And, that he just couldn't, listen, when you're a loser, you're a loser. There was another guy, Joe Ruggs, great guy, nice guy, family member of the Gottis through marriage. And he couldn't pick a game. When him and my father would pick games together, we used to tell him, just let's see who they like and pick the other side. Because it's a lock. If the two of them like one side, just bet the other side.
Damn, that sounds like me, man.
Did you, what was the first moment, I don't think I've ever asked you this, that you felt that Gotti Sr. fully took you under his wing? Like the first time you're like, this guy, he's got my back and he wants me to do well with him.
Because he was always yelling at me. So, honestly.
Really?
If he didn't like me, he would have killed me for all the shit I did. He really liked me. And, when people say, listen, the guy nonstop was screaming because I shot somebody, hurt somebody, did something when I wasn't supposed to, besides the ones I was supposed to. So he would laugh and shake his head, when he wasn't yelling. And he'd say, he told guys, like Bobby the Jew was another guy that stayed around us. And he would tell him, Bobby and him were on a phone booth when I shot a guy in the chest. And, later on, Bobby said, this kid reminds me of me, So, you'd always make comments like that to different guys. Or Bobby Borrell would tell me, he loves you. He told me all the time. He says, it's just that you're just so crazy. He's trying to, control you a little bit. So if John don't like you, trust me, you're not staying there. He's no dummy. He'd sit in a room, and if you're in that room, he knows you're in that room. So, he wouldn't let me, on the weekends, we'd all sit at a table if you're straightened out and you have dinner with us. If you're not straightened out, you sit in the back room or you sit next door across the street, I'd sit at the table. So these are the steps that he showed that that he really liked me, and obviously keeping me around his family the way he did. Obviously, he respected me for what I did for a living.
How old was it when you first were introduced to him, and then when you finally were like, sitting at the table with him?
Right away. But I was around every guy. It's not like I just came from nowhere. That wouldn't happen. I was around his family since I'm a kid. And, when guys couldn't come down the block, and I'm talking about Ronnie Wanham later on, we get him straightened out, or Jojo Carrazzo later on, he gets straightened out. They had to come through me to go down the block. They couldn't come by John. They'd have to ask me, can you ask John, can I come down? So, when guys talk about, Junior didn't like Ronnie Wanham, and Ronnie Wanham hated Junior. And that's been going on for years. But Senior actually liked Ronnie. So it was a hard, I was always playing the middle for everybody. I had to be the go-between and the nonsense that goes on, with the nonsense stuff that goes on, because a lot of that bullshit goes on with politics between guys and crews. Even though we're all a Gambino family, everybody's jealous of each other.
You know what I find so funny? Because like Ronnie One, so much older than me, so you know him good. He was so feared in my generation. I'm just saying, like, guys were scared to look at him. No, I know, because I'm young. You know what I'm saying?
Well, listen, he did a couple things,
Right.
but he's not the guy.
Guys wouldn't even look at him. They were
Well,
scared
I'm
to
going
look
to tell you
at
why. He stayed with Robert Engels, and Robert Engels was a straight tough guy, killer, gangster, who was Nicky Carrazzo's guy. And, guys that don't know the history, don't understand it. And then after him, he started staying with me, telling everybody he's my partner, because he lived off our reputation, different guys' reputations. I mean, did Ronnie know the street? Yeah, he knew the street. Was he schooled well? He knew how to be a bullshit ass con man, and that's part of being the street. So he did know the street, but as a serious tough guy killer, no. And I mean, look at his opening statement he made about me in court, which you guys all know, and it's been out there now, and enough people read it that if he isn't nice to me, that I'd kill him like everybody else. I mean, what kind of statement is that from a captain of Gambino family in open court? So that'll show you about what some of the treachery of the life to even say that about me.
There was something else you brought up earlier. I think it was when you were talking about Senior ordering a hit, I believe, on Tommy. And I think you talked about...
On Tommy Karate?
Yeah.
No, he never ordered it. Tommy asked John to ask me to kill the guy from...
But it was from in jail, right?
It was him from MCC.
Now, how did that work when messages were relayed from someone in jail to someone who's out of jail?
Well, John gave it to his brother, Pete.
Okay.
And Pete at the time was the acting boss, who came and brought it to me, told me to wait at the club for him, that he had to go see his brother, and he's got a message for me. So it comes directly, and something like that, it's going to come direct. It's going to be tight because what you're talking about is a murder.
Right.
It's not going to go through a couple of guys, and especially where John was sitting at that time.
Right.
And, Tommy asked for a favor. John owed him a favor after Willie Boy, and we left that part out. And, Sammy gave the other version of that. John gave his word, and I don't know about that part of the story. I just know the part that you had to be crazy to think that John wasn't going to kill you after you became an informant and you met with the FBI. So it just shows you that Willie Boy is not thinking straight, because the minute he got out of jail, he should have took off for the Bahamas. I mean, because you're going to go. In those days, you're going to. It's not like today, where you got all these typist guys that typing away about everybody, and they're killing everything, and they never threw a rock in the water. So it's crazy. This is 2020.
Was Senior when you would go out with Senior, was he treated like a celebrity?
Oh, 100%.
Do you have any favorite stories of maybe nights out with Senior?
Listen, there's so many stories, because we used to go to Regimes, Club A. We went to top clubs, and in our day, everybody's dressed. We didn't go out without being dressed. And if you dress like a slob, he'd send you home to get dressed. So we already knew to get dressed. And, and there's champagne, and there's women around, and there's everybody serving and jumping. And listen, these are the stories that I think the media misses out on, because if you ask my opinion, you want to hear stories about John, talk about the nightlife and talk about his personality outside of being a gangster, when he can, loosen up his tie and his shirt. He was the best to go out with. And anybody that says any different is lying. He was just a fun guy to go out with. And, he even yelled, and used to yell at his kid all the time and dress him down and tell him, stop acting like a fucking old man and go live life. So one thing John did know is how to live life, and especially in Florida and places where we went on his boat, not guilty, and we go to the Hamptons or Fire Island, or, some of the restaurants and clubs, he'd hit the water. The guy just knew how to have a good time. That part he did. He just... would relax when he was with some of his inner circle guys.
No, I was going to say, a lot of times they always question about you being in the social clubs and everything like that. I've seen the surveillance. I mean, we've seen the pictures. It shows you actually at these social clubs.
That's nonsense.
But I'm just saying, but why don't you clear it up a little? Because
it doesn't matter, because the problem is you're going to get idiots talking. There's a whole neighborhood full of guys that grow up with us, like your cousin whose father was the boss, that clarified this 1,000 times. You're going to get typists that talk stupid and don't understand the intricacies of our life. Don't want to understand it. Just want their version of it. And that's life. I mean, I'm going to beat my head against the wall to try to convince some imbecile about what happened. I mean, The people that know, no. The people that understand you can't possibly discuss some of the things that we discuss or other guys discuss, that just can't be done. Or Ronnie One-Arm's opening statement. What is that? What is that about? Or Mikey Scar's statements about me, or Joe Messina's. Or, I mean, so it's stupid at this point to keep going and reiterating nonsense for these dummies that, like I said, never threw a rock in a water in a lake. So, you know.
No, I just wanted to bring you back to the senior and going out, because I think a lot of people would enjoy like picturing exactly what a classic night out with senior and his
You ever watch John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever?
Yeah.
Okay, John could dance like that. Nobody knows it.
Really?
No, I'm joking. Nah, listen, I know that everybody wishes they could see him dance. No, listen, he just played around. He liked the joke. I mean, you know.
How many you would go out?
Oh, you know, at times it was, 20 guys. And at times it was like Joe Watts was always there, and Bobby Borriello was around a lot. And, when we went down to, to Joseph's in Fort Lauderdale, you would make sure that he had the upstairs lounge for him. And, I'd have to have a certain amount of people there, female and male, that he would want.
Is he paying
We'd
for
stay
everything?
at the Yankee Clipper. Listen,
He's probably not paying for anything.
Joe Watts paid for Joe Watts didn't let him pay for shit. Joe Watts paid for everything. Joe Watts and him were inseparable, and especially down in Lauderdale. And we'd stay at the Clipper, and I mean, it was some funny stories. A waitress came over to us when we were at the pool, and Mikey Scars, I think, told this story somewhere. We're all at the pool, and a waitress comes over and she puts on a tray. The FBI are upstairs at the window. Now we're looking at the window, but you can't see in really because of the sun, maybe, or maybe it's shaded. I don't remember. But they got surveillance cameras, so they're watching. So she comes up, she gives us the thing, and he told John. So he starts joking with her. He didn't give a shit. In other words, he's telling her how many, how they dressed, are they in shorts, are they in the underwear, are they banging each other? He's just kidding, and she's all serious about it. Like, listen, he knows he's being followed. So, but those are the everyday, kind of interactions that he actually loved it. He didn't care. He liked the attention. He loved he loved to have a good time. That part he did.
Was there any fear when you guys knew that maybe you guys were being watched or that they were following you? Did they ever come, like, if you're at a club, would the FBI come and...
Now, in Ozone Park, there's a trestle overhead, and we found a camera up there that would shooting down. Figured out how we found it, where we found it, and we climbed up there and we took it. Another time there was a van there, and they're outside the van, and John knocked on the door. He had somebody knock on the door, and there was a diner in between 98th and 99th Street, and the guy that I think it was Nick was the owner's name, I forget, but I think it was Nick, Greek guy. And he knocks on the thing, and he says he had somebody. He said that John wanted to know what you wanted to eat, today, since you were in there all day. So he was dead serious, though. He wasn't even doing it like, why is this? He was like, ask them what they want to eat. If they're going to be there all day, he says, send them some food in there. So, this is just part of it. He knew what was going on.
I think that gets them more mad when the cockiness. What really wants to, like...
Some guys take it personal, some
Yeah.
guys didn't.
Yeah.
Just like John, he said, let them do their job. He always used to tell all of us, don't be threatening them, don't be this, don't be that.
Right.
I don't want you saying nothing. He would warn us, so in that aspect, he was okay. John Miller used to come around on a regular. So those are just,
Did you feel like the FBI smartened up over time?
Listen, we ain't the smartest guys around. The guys on the street, they didn't have to smarten up. Everybody's got this belief about, everybody jokes about. That's why Analyze This and Analyze That was pretty funny movies, because it's kind of depicts everybody truthfully. There's a handful of smart guys. The rest are dummies. They can't find their way back down to the club, and we live right there. So, somebody in Philly said that. He says, we're doing a hit. They got lost. He says, we live in South Philly. How the fuck can't they know where they're going? But it's the truth. They're dummies.
And Gene, for you, was the party life more like in the your generation of the mob? Was it the same kind of thing of going out? I mean,
Well,
did you guys go out a lot?
We had one guy in our crew that loved the party, Mike Palmacio. I went out with him a lot. Ronnie G did not like the party. He wasn't a club guy. Back in the day, they said Vinny Sarah was a big party guy. He loved women and all that stuff. But my era, I went out with Mike Palmacio a lot, and we had a good time. We were all in the nightclubs and everything. We partied a lot.
What were the big clubs in the city?
One
you went
Oak,
to? You're at One Oak a lot?
Yeah, all of them spots, all over the hot cities.
When was the last time you were at One Oak?
2013.
Okay.
Remember, I was gone 2014.
Yeah.
So
And I mean,
Yeah, it's after he robbed Ronnie's 300 grand. He was at every club around down in Miami.
He was the only big club guy. Mike Mauricio was like a big kid. If anyone knows Mike, Mike was like, he was 48 going on 20. So he'd be out with us, dating young girls, partying with us all the time. That's how he was.
did the bouncers, for the both of you, did they know,
Some clubs.
I had all the bouncers.
Right.
We used to have them. We used to put them in the clubs. They used to work for us. So
you
and
got
the ones that didn't know, like the guy that put his hands on Koenig's son, Johnny Koenig's son, I shot him in the Hamptons. The other guy that put his hands on Angelo Ruggiero's son, Johnny Boy, who was dead, I shot him. So the guys that didn't know anybody, they learned fast. A guy put his hands on the Skinny Dom's son, Nicholas, when he was a kid at the Avantis that we were partners when I was partners with a Genovese guy. And same thing, took him in the room and, we blackjacked them. So, they're going to learn one way or another, they better watch whose hands they put on who.
Was it obvious to like the ordinary people that were out in the social scenes or the clubs, like who you guys were?
Yeah.
Well, they tried pulling that on me in a bar one time, and they go, "You know whose place this is?" I said, "I don't give a fuck whose place this is." Wait, we get into it. The guy, he's talking all shit. I follow him and I blew his car up, and that's why I show him. I don't give a fuck who your place is. That's it. Nobody cares about who your place is.
I mean,
I didn't care.
Those days, like, if we go to, usually a lot of places are ours. Like Club 8 was John's spot. Right. So, that's the old, later on it becomes Scores. And you go to the Red Parrot, and that was Fat Andy's place. And me and Albert and Anthony, we all used to go to Bobby Greco, the jockey, at the time used to stay with us. So there was a lot of us. And, you go to the spots that are really ours. We go to After Hours, the Black Gate down in Brooklyn that we all went to. That's where Frankie Burke gets killed. And we used to hang out there, all of us. And those are our guys. Tito, a Spanish guy, was involved with us. And so, most of the spots are ours or become ours once we're there.
What percentage do you think of like the nightlife in New York City and during your era was owned by the mob? And
No, not our era. More their era. Our era was...
Listen, you don't operate a club, major club like Channel 80 is, Philly Basile's, his son Frankie and Roger were friends of ours, and they were Lucchese guys around Jimmy Burke originally. So, listen, every one of us, my father had a club called Hammerheads, probably the hottest rock club ever in Long Island. Speaks was Philly Basile's also, it was out in Long Island. And, my father's club it was with Blackie, Luciano. So, these clubs were all run and owned, and, we got a piece of, someone got a piece of Bedrocks in the city was where Shorty gets killed, and I was supposed to hit that guy for John. With Bobby Boreal, and then later on places with Bobby, it's with Mikey Scars, and so they're with us one way or another. Either our money's in it, or they're paying homage to us.
Now, last question about Senior. What was the last interaction you had with him?
Right there, 1991, when he asked me to hit Dennis Harrigan, is probably the last time I have direct access to him. And after that, I'm Jeannie Gotti's cellmate, 1997 in McKeon. And I was very friendly in those days with Joe Gambino, who was also in prison with us. And then that's a story we'll tell, what happened with that falling out. And my friendship always remained with the Gambino side. Joe Gambino, Tommy Gambino, these guys were gentlemen. I say it, everybody never hears me say anything bad. These guys carried themselves in a different way. And I don't have anything too good to say about Jeannie Gotti.
All right, well.
And either did John, by the way, as his brother. So.
We'll talk about that on
we'll
a
leave
future
everybody on the next
episode.
one.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you guys. Where can I can tell them where they can follow you? You, Gene Boy 666, and you got a new one. You got a new name.
True John A. Yeah. And I don't know, the office changed. It said, even I forgot they changed it. And KCL, by the way, auto body, auto mechanics, inspections, tires, buy here, pay here, used cars, 98 Henry Street, East Stroudsburg, PA. If anybody's interested, please reach out. And www.johnalite.com is my website if anybody looking to reach and find us.
And for myself at Felix.Levine. And then make sure you subscribe to the Patreon if you haven't done so already, and the YouTube channel, and everyone on Instagram. Thank you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.